The left pilot now say fuel lever to shut off. The right pilot doesn't pick it up. But the right pilot now, he gives a mayday call to the tower. Mayday, mayday, mayday. TransAsia 635. And the tower replies with, please contact Taipei approach 119.7, which is a bit strange. Instead of help them out, they transfer them. Anyway, nobody picks that up, they just leave it. They now continue throwing up balls, and the chaos is just increasing, and nobody really communicates. So what happens next now is that the right pilot, he now most likely scanned the instruments and realized that, oh, we lost both engines. We have no engines. And shortly after that, even the left pilot realized that they shut down the wrong engine. So now the left pilot just calls out, restart the engine. He do not inform the right pilot what engine. He just says restart the engines, and he will do it a total of 11 times. And the right pilot, he now says Roger, and he pushed the start button. Nothing happens because he's not doing the right procedure. And the left pilot just goes on, restart the engine. And the right pilot trying, and the left pilot again, restart the engine. And the right pilot say, I can't restart it. And they're going back and forth like this. And in the meantime, I mean, they have too low speed, they have stall on, they have stick shaker, they're getting closer to the buildings, they're getting closer to the bridge and to the river. And they just continue like this, and then eventually the right pilot says, I can't restart the engine. Now the observer pilot, 5 seconds before the crash, the observer pilot says a second announcement, which is impact, impact, brace for impact, which is a call from the pilot to the cabin crew about 60 seconds before an impact, which is a correct item. However, he should have helped them earlier with something more critical than this. And then about 3 minutes after departure, they now stall the aircraft, meaning that they sort of goes almost 90 degrees like this vertical, and cutting the wing over a bridge. And exactly when they come to this point of the bridge, there is a taxi passing, so the wing goes just in front of the windscreen of the car. So the driver is badly injured and his passengers receive minor injuries, and then they crash in this river. The first thing, reject the takeoff when they have the first fault on the runway. And then secondly, when they have this engine fail, the pilot flying remains the autopilot, focus on aviate the aircraft. Pilot monitoring confirms what engine is failed, and then shut down the correct engine. And then they can leave the autopilot in. They climb to a safe altitude where they start reading the checklists and sort out the problem. And then they can most likely turn back to the field. They have good weather, it's daylight. And in this case, when it's only an auto feather, it's called the flame out. There's no fault with the engine. So after you have shut down the engine, you can most likely make a restart, and it will probably start. And then you can land safely with 2 engines, and then let them have an engineer check the aircraft. Right, when you restart the engine, because this was one issue in this crash. When you're going to restart the engine on the ATR, the first thing you do, there's like a switch in the ceiling. You choose left or right engine number 1 or 2. You must first turn this one to number 2. pilot monitor didn't do that. And after that, you push the start button. Then the start sequence is pretty quick, between 15 to 20 seconds. When the engine is started, you just go take the propellers from feather to unfeather. And that takes another maybe 5-7 seconds. And then you are up and running. So if the pilots had dealt with the start engine in the correct way, perhaps the crash could have been avoided. In the cockpit, there were 3 pilots. There was an extra pilot on the observer seat, which is a huge asset for the operating pilots, because he has the big outlook, he can see what's going on, and he can assist the pilots. He can read in checklists, he can do radio communication, and he can also point out what they should do. He said absolutely nothing. Why? Don't know. Was he stressed? Perhaps. Was he out of the loop? I don't know, perhaps. Or is that due to the corporate culture in the company? I don't know. However, he didn't help them at all. Now I will make a summary of this accident. Right, so the first thing that happened, there was no rejected takeoff with ATPCS. And pilot flying, he most likely becomes stressed from the first event with the ATPCS. Perhaps also startled when that happened on the runway. So on the runway, he had the first occasion, which was still in his mind. So he buried it with him up. And then when it counted 12 on the feet, 38 seconds after liftoff, when the engine failed, perhaps the left pilot was already stressed to a level when he was supposed to deal with the next problem. There was no capacity for that. Pilot monitoring, the right pilot, he had initially some situational awareness when you read the report. He identified the correct engine, engine number 2. He also followed some of the protocol. He checked the up trim, that the engines produced some more power, the live engine, and the failed engine went into auto feather, which is correct. So he initially he had some. The right pilot also tried to alert the commander, but the commander he wasn't able to hear out what the right pilot said. And perhaps the left pilot recalled the 2 previous engine shutdowns on the delivery flight. Perhaps that was a close friend to the captain. Perhaps this captain have talked to that captain about the events. I don't know about that. Or perhaps it was just known to him that they have shut down the engine twice and it was left engine. I don't know. This is just my thoughts about it. And in a stressed situation, the first sense that shut down with humans is the hearing. You can't hear anymore. And that is done so you can focus on the task you're doing. As a result of that, the human shut down the hearing, you also stop communicating. So now you have lost both the hearing and the communication. And this is a typical situation when humans are overstressed. In my opinion, there are too many significant remarks from previous training on this captain. Was he suitable to be a commander on the ATR 72-600? And my answer is no, he wasn't. The other pilots, I don't know that much about, because in the end, it always comes down to the commander, because the commander is the person who leads the crew, who leads the show, who is the person who makes all decisions, and that person has to be the right person with the right tools and the right capabilities to be the commander. And it's up to the training department of the company to reject a pilot who not fulfill those requirements. So I would say it does actually, I don't blame the pilot. I blame the training organization who did not reject this pilot to be upgraded as commander. Lack of leadership, poor situational awareness, poor crew resource management, poor communication, and poor corporate culture were all contributing factors to this tragic crash.